Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome. My name is Kirsten, and I'm part of the team here at Premier Development Partners. Thank you for joining us for the first webinar in the Optimize Your Organization series. Today, we are joined by Dan Ohlson, who is the Regional Director at Jani-King Cleveland, and he's going to discuss the true difference between cleaning and disinfecting. One quick housekeeping note before we get started. There's going to be time for a Q&A at the end of the presentation. However, you can feel free to submit your questions as they pop up. So you can go ahead and submit those in the group chat, either to everyone or directly to me, it doesn't matter. And then I will present the questions to Dan at the end. So Dan, go ahead and take it away.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Thanks for being here. Kirsten's actually going to be controlling the slides today because we had a little technical difficulty. So you just got the title slide. You can go to the next one. And really, we're obviously a local cleaning company, and our roots are really in healthcare. So our expertise in that area really is everything to do with how well we perform in regular cleaning as well. I'm going to share some of that with you today. Our biggest partner in town is UH. We clean 2 or 3 million square feet a day for them. So we've got a lot of long history in healthcare cleaning. Next slide, please. Just a couple of quick definitions that really do help people understand the differences that we're going to talk about. You know, when we talk about cleaning, that's more of a physical process where you are just physically removing dust, soil, and other foreign materials from surfaces. Sanitizing is probably what people do most often, even though they think they're disinfecting things. It has to do with the chemicals used and the amount of time they spend doing it. Disinfecting is the intent, especially in these COVID times, with killing and destroying all the bad organisms, and that's why people are amping up their cleaning these days. And then sterilizing is the top of the chain where you're getting to the healthcare environment. Next one, please. The first and most important step in the disinfection process is cleaning. And that's one thing people always get caught in the weeds on. They think they can just spray disinfectants all over and they're fine, but you have to physically clean surfaces before you disinfect. It's very, very important. There's things called biofilms that you can't see with the naked eye, and they tend to harbor all the bad pathogens, and that's what you're going after. Believe it or not, a lot of times the physical cleaning is as effective for most people as the disinfection if it's just an office environment. So if you just do a thorough clean, oftentimes you're in great shape. So we stress that a lot of the times. Cleaning often ensures that your disinfectant will be able to reach the microscopic contamination. So it usually is a two-step process. And in most cases, you can't kill microbes if you don't clean first. There's a few exceptions to that. But again, a good physical cleaning is oftentimes really adequate for office environments. Next one, please, Kirsten. Get a little bit into chemistry of cleaning. We talk about detergents, and there's detergents in most chemicals. And the purpose of those is to wet or penetrate, break apart the soils, and then surround them. So there's a lot more going on than most people realize when you're selecting the right chemicals for cleaning. Next one, please. We talk about surfactants, and that's the level of a surfactant in a chemical has everything to do with how effective it is. It increases the wetting power. And when you're getting into cleaning and disinfecting, we really want to keep surfaces wet, and it's very difficult to do. I have that little icon of the car there because what we're trying to achieve with cleaning and disinfecting is actually the opposite of what you'd like to see when you have that freshly waxed car where the moisture beads up and rolls off the hood of the car. We're trying to keep things wet as long as we can, and it's very difficult to do for the proper amount of time, which we'll talk about here in a minute. So the right surfactants are very effective on these biofilms, and some chemicals just work better. And we'll be talking about some of the differences here. Next slide, please. It should be on the one that says the nines matter. And this is probably the most misunderstood part of chemicals and their efficacy that we run into. People will pick up something in the store or see it online and it will say it kills 99.9% of all bacteria. What people don't realize is in the chemical world, the nines that are to the right of the decimal point are very, very significant. So we talk in terms of what are logarithmic reductions. So if you look at a 1 log, that's a 90% reduction. 2 log is 99%. And most people think, hey, 99%, that's pretty good reduction. Well, it is, but relatively speaking, it's not what you need in the germ world, as it were. So if you go to the next slide, please, Kirsten. So as an example, if you've got a million bacteria on a plate or in the real world on your desktop, a 1 log reduction would reduce that by 90%. But that leaves 100,000 active bacteria remaining. So if you go through that iteration, when you get down to something like a log 3, you've removed 99.9%, but you're still left behind 1,000 bacteria. That's not great. And the worst part is those immediately will start to replicate and they'll reproduce. And within a day or so, you've got a lot more bacteria back in play. So you're going for absolute kills with the chemicals at hand. Next slide, please. So as kind of a graphical form of this, you can see there's a million colonized units there on the top of the graph. If you look at the bottom of the graph, it's not till you get out towards about a log 3 till you're where you need to start being for good efficacy. And we try to use chemicals that are generally in the log 4, log 5, log 6 range. And those are not your standard household cleaners in most cases. Next slide, please. So with that in mind, when you look at chemicals, you're really looking for a higher impact with the kill claims that they make on the labels itself. And those are things that we research heavily before we apply the right chemical for the right application. There's another thing called bioload, and it's something that you don't know or you can't see, but there's based on what the surface in play has on it. We refer to that as bioload. So the heavier the bioload, the more difficult it is to kill what's there. It gets back to that good mechanical cleaning followed by a great disinfectant. So there's a lot of stuff you can't see that is absolutely in play. I can make the argument that if you came into most residences and you did swab testing or different meter testing that we can do to measure bioloads, I could convince you that you're safer eating dinner in your bathroom than you are in your kitchen, because kitchens are inherently much more dirty. They carry much more bacteria and viruses than your bathroom does at home. Sounds a little bit gross, but it's a fact. So we see this all the time with bioloads. And actually, the rate of illness is a condition based on bioloads in an environment and the general health of the individual. So it's a kind of a two-pronged thing. It's how dirty is your facility and how healthy is your immune system. That's literally what it comes down to if people get ill or not in the workplace or at home. Next slide, please, Kirsten. There's 4 factors that play into good cleaning: the time and labor, agitation, the concentration of the chemicals themselves, and the temperatures. And I'll break those down for you here real quickly. Next slide, please. The 5 basic elements: the contact time, the temperature, the concentration, the mechanical action, and the pH of the chemical. All 5 of those things have a significant role in the outcome. They're not mutually exclusive, but spending more time versus not can actually offset if you don't have the right concentration of chemical. We try to achieve all 5 in their proper fashion to get the best possible outcome. Usually when you don't get a good cleaning outcome, it has more to do with the protocols not being followed than one of these things not being dialed in just right for the application at hand. Next slide, please. So tools and equipment are very critical in the process. So the main things to consider are if you're sourcing these things: price, useful life, suitable for the task or not, and the labor cost. In most cases, you're not getting to extreme costs with cleaning, but when you get into the healthcare environment, you have to have trade-offs because we prefer disposable products. So you can clean once, throw them away. They're relatively expensive compared to stuff you can launder, but for obvious reasons, when you're cleaning operating rooms or other healthcare environments, you truly would prefer to go to a disposable type of utility there. Okay, next slide, please. The processes themselves, we always mention this again more out of the healthcare vein, but You do want to be very systematic when you clean anything, including workspaces and general office. So you never go at it different each night, as it were. You want to go into the environment and clean the same way, the same process, the same rotation every single time. That way you clean from dirtiest to cleanest, and you end up with a better end result. And you also don't miss things that way. So now this says cleanest to dirtiest. It's kind of just the verbiage there. But in a given environment, you want to get the worst pathogens out first and go back to the critical surfaces. Something you don't worry about much if you're outsourcing your cleaning, but if you do your own, there are some specific do's and don'ts when you clean certain areas of the office environment. Next slide, please, Kirsten. As a general rule, no one can disinfect without cleaning. So there may be a failure in the agents, but usually it's a human error. So people that get caught up in, hey, I've got this great disinfectant, I'm going to just spray it on everything and it's going to kill everything. The fatal flaw there is if you've got a bio load that's on the surface that, again, you can't see with the naked eye, those disinfectants can't get to the pathogens to achieve a proper kill. So can't stress enough the importance of that physical clean before you disinfect. Yes, you've probably got stuff in your cupboard right now that says cleans and disinfects. I guess you can say that's true, but what they're telling you is you need to use it twice. You need to clean with it and then disinfect with it to achieve the best possible outcome. Next slide, please. The 5 R's of surface cleaning and disinfecting, if you can pop to the very next one, please, Kirsten. We talk about 5 elements: the right staff, the right training, the right equipment, right chemical, and the right time. And I'm going to focus on just 2 of those for you today because they're the most critical. Next slide, please. The right chemical. We always talk about wanting chemicals that are EPA registered. They meet the right to know requirements, which just simply means they're properly labeled. So if they're in your workplace, anyone that comes in there can easily see what they're labeled for, all the safety requirements, things like that. There's standardizations for training and risk management that are involved with the right chemicals. They must meet all EPA and OSHA guidelines. And then the storage areas are maintained, meaning chemicals have to be stored properly, labeled properly, and those labels and/or what we call safety data sheets have to be available to anyone who walks in your facility. Something that's not well known, but you might even want to audit your own workspace, is if you've got any chemical in a container that's not properly labeled and someone from the state or the EPA walked into your building and they found that, let's say it's a clear bottle with Windex in it, and you've got a Sharpie that says glass cleaner on it, that comes down to a $14,000 fine for improper label. So, and the real ironic thing there is if I'm professionally cleaning your building and I leave that bottle behind and you're not even doing your own cleaning, that fine gets levied against the property owner or occupant, not the cleaning company. We always guard against that. We train extensively and we fine our franchisees if they have a violation. So we usually beat anything to the punch. But that's something really important to keep in mind. If you do your own cleaning, you've got chemicals in the facility. In the commercial space, there's absolutely zero tolerance by the state when they come in and see mislabeled containers. So just a little food for thought there. Next slide, please. Using the other 4 R's do achieve that right time. And that's in conjunction with the right daily, weekly, and monthly protocols. And again, following a lot of time for proper surface disinfection really is the key. You can't rush cleaning, and you certainly can't rush disinfection for those reasons. Next slide, please, Kirsten. This is where selecting the right chemical really becomes crucial. So this slide here talks about developing a successful surface level disinfection program by selecting the right products. If you start to really get into the details of most disinfectants and what their claims are on the label, we'll say it kills this, it kills that. But what you're really looking at in conjunction with that, or you should be, is the dwell time. So if a product claims to kill influenza or SARS or any of those things, you have to look at what the kill times are. And most of them out there today are 10 minutes, at least your grocery store variety. And that means you've got to keep the surface entirely wet for 10 minutes to achieve that kill time. And I'd say a little experiment, go home and spray your kitchen counter or your kitchen table down with Lysol or even glass cleaner and see if it will stay wet for 10 minutes. I guarantee you it won't, it evaporates. So, if you've got a 10-minute dwell time in a chemical, you literally would have to sit there and continually spray the surface to ensure that it was wet for 10 minutes to get that achieved kill. It's very difficult to do. That's why we try to select products that have a much shorter dwell time in them. If you could go one more slide there, Kirsten. So again, this is kind of a continuation, but again, dwell times we're looking for 5 minutes, and even there's stuff out there that 3 minutes and 2 minutes as well. So that's really where we're trying to get to today. One more slide will show a very comprehensive list of some common, some uncommon pathogens out there, but everything on this list is probably something we've dealt with at some level, both in the OR environment or just general cleaning. It's a wide list, but the point here being is if you went and did researched all these pathogens and then you cross-reference them to the various chemicals out there, everything on this page might have a different time necessary to kill it. So if you've got a more easily killed virus like influenza, you might be able to achieve a really effective kill in 4 minutes. Same chemical might need 10 or 12 on some of these, and here if they're really nasty pathogens. That's why the selection process is so critical. The product mentioned there in the upper right, Decon 7, is one we've used for years. We do use it for COVID because it's so amazingly effective, but we use it for a wide variety of the worst pathogens out there. This is actually a biological agent that was developed by the military for bioterrorism, and it was commercialized years ago, and it's our go-to product if you've got really, really bad problems in a facility. So that's just a good cross section of what is out there and how you go about treating it. Next section, next slide there, please. Another thing that's kind of interesting is some of these pathogens you hear about, MRSA, I think most of you have heard of VREs, are very, very tough one that you see in the hospital environment. C. diff, another one that's kind of known for hospitals, nursing homes. These all have there's a wide variety of the times that these pathogens will remain on the surface. So some are for days, weeks, and it means you have to get in there and kill them or they're going to be there for a long time. You notice down at the bottom there, influenza, 24 to 48 hours. That's one where you'll see a story, and you'll probably see it this year when the schools will close down because they've got a flu outbreak, and they'll show on the news custodians running through the school with bottles of bleach water, spraying everything down, and they'll be trying to disinfect the kids' desks, and then bring them back, the next week or something. The truth is, if you had an influenza outbreak in a school here and you just closed the school down for a weekend, when you came back on the following week, you probably wouldn't have to disinfect anything because influenza needs a host. It won't live on surfaces for more than a day or two. So that's another thing that you have to be aware of. What is it that you're trying to combat? That has everything to do with how you go about selecting the proper chemical and then treating the area. Kirsten, next slide, please. The efficacy of disinfectants. In most instances, you're looking for what the label will tell you and what pathogens that it's effective against. And what we always stress is this: if the claim is not on the label, it probably isn't true. You can't just indiscriminately, as a manufacturer, put on your label that you kill COVID or you kill anything else unless it's been through extensive testing, and that comes at great expense. So we always tell people, start with the label, and then you work out from there. The label claims are really the Bible, because you cannot legally put a label claim on there if it has not been proven in an independent third-party lab at the expense of the manufacturer. And there's a lot of misinformation out there about that right now. Next one, please, Kirsten. And to that end, what is it about that EPA EPA N-List we all hear about. And this is probably the most confused area out there today, especially with, COVID hitting. And if you go to the EPA website, you can go to epa.gov and Google N-List, and it will have this statement on here. EPA expects the products on the N-List to kill SARS, COVID-2, the coronavirus that causes COVID-19 because and it gives 3 bullets, they demonstrate efficacy against the coronavirus. I can tell you right now, I know of 2 products that actually have a label claim against COVID-19. One is bleach, and it's not that effective against it, but it does have a claim. But you don't, bleach is nasty to work with. And the other one that I know of is that the product I mentioned earlier, that the Decon 7. That's the only 2 products out there today that have ever been tested for absolute efficacy against SARS-CoV-2. Second bullet, demonstrate efficacy against a pathogen that is harder to kill than SARS. Now that sounds reasonable, right? If I can kill something that's worse than COVID, it must kill COVID. But the problem there is that's a supposition, because you haven't proven you've killed COVID yet. So that one is very, very loosey-goosey, but it confuses people. And then the third one is demonstrate efficacy against a different human coronavirus similar to SARS. And that's one that just makes us shake our head, because if you can go home today, if you've got Lysol in your home, you can pick up the can of Lysol and it's going to say this is 99.9% effective. And there we're back to that log 3, which is not that great, against human coronavirus. And what's interesting is this virus that's been plaguing us for the last 2 years has nothing to do with the human coronavirus. It's a bovine variety, much more difficult to kill. It really can't be compared, but the EPA will allow that comparison to be made. So when you pick up that can of Lysol, it will say COVID on it. And people think, oh, great, I'll take this home because I can disinfect with Lysol against COVID. I'm here to tell you, I would sooner use water than Lysol at home against COVID. It's not an apples to apples comparison. So be a little leery with this EPA N-List. The other thing that people don't realize is the EPA tests nothing. Every single item listed on that N-List has never been tested by the EPA. They're just taking previous test data against known pathogens or similar pathogens, and they're letting people qualify for that list based on that. It's a very, very misleading list. So little food for thought there. Next slide, please, Kirsten. Use of microfiber in the environment. Now, microfiber is a cleanable, reusable substrate, but we are rapidly outside of healthcare migrating to disposables, both with cloths and mopping systems. Like I said, they are a little more expensive, but they've come down significantly. And for our money, there's nothing better than using a cloth or a mop head one time in a specific area and then throwing it away, rather than trying to use it time and time again, because they've done studies even on laundered items, and they can hold pathogens even after going through rigorous washing and high heat drying and everything else. So that's something you should, if you've got areas that you're concerned about in your environment, you may want to ask about the use of disposables versus reusables for cleaning. Next slide, please, Kirsten. So not knowing who's on the call today, and if there's some questions, we can get into them. What's best for you? More frequent cleaning? Do you need enhanced disinfection? I'll be honest, we've had record years the last 2 years with people asking for enhanced services, meaning, hey, you used to come and just clean, now I want you to stay longer and do these other tasks, usually disinfection. Sometimes they're very much needed. I think some of it is not needed, and we counsel our clients in that fashion. We don't just go with the concern and say, yeah, you need this. We'll discuss with them and see what really is the best protocol for their environment. We have things like back to work checklists. If you're just returning or partially returning, we can work with you on new cleaning protocols that will serve the needs of whatever your office environment looks like at this time. And we have things including signage that alert your employees and your visitors to the things you're doing in the environment. We've actually seen a trend in the last year where people have asked us to shift the cleaning from after hours to daytime, where they're actually there working because they want their employees to see that the cleaning is actually taking place, which is really divergent from our industry. Most people want their buildings cleaned when they've gone home for the day, but that's just one of these quirky byproducts of COVID and safe workplaces. Next slide there, Kirsten. Cleaning and disinfecting are distinctly separate tasks. Just remember the importance of proper cleaning. There's really no substitute for it. The chemicals absolutely matter. Keep that in mind. We talked about the efficacy, and maybe you've got a little keener eye for the labels today. Don't get too excited when you see that something is 99% effective, because in the germ world, that really isn't anything to brag about. Something we didn't talk about previously, but I put it on here because there's a lot of stuff out there now, and I put the bullet there: don't get hooked on surface protectants. There's a whole slew of things now that bill themselves as you can spray this on your surface and it will keep killing everything for hours, days, weeks. All sorts of false claims out there. But the one thing, and we've studied these, and there are some applications for them, but the one thing they lack is what we call a viral claim. So all these things you hear, like Microban, you can buy that and you can spray it on your kitchen counter. It's supposed to kill things, after the fact. They do kill some molds and some mildews and things, but what we're generally looking for is viruses and bacteria. And these companies that make these surface protectants are feverishly trying to get those EPA label claims approved. But to do so, you have to get through a lab environment and prove that, hey, if I spray this on this surface and I introduce a pathogen X number of hours or X number of days later, I can prove that it kills that. And nobody out there that's selling these surface protectants has been able to get over that hurdle. So they're not a panacea either. So if you want to use them, you might feel a little bit better, but they have no label claims, and that's getting right back to the label. If you can't put it on the label, you haven't been able to prove it. And then if you want to just flip the last one up there, Kirsten, there's my name, phone number here at the office, email. If there's anything that anybody would like to discuss offline or after today's meeting, I'd be happy to talk to you. Just reach out and I'll certainly respond to you. So with that, I will open it up to any questions or comments.
Thanks so much, Jan. So like he said, if you think of any questions later, you can go ahead and feel free to reach out to him. There's his phone number and email address. We did get a few questions, so I'm going to go ahead and present those now. So you had mentioned things like the log kill and the contact time. Are those things that would be included on the label, or would you have to do your own research to figure those out?
Very good question. If you with the properly labeled product, there's an EPA registration number on there. It's on every label out there. You can go right to that same, I think it's EPA.gov. You can enter that EPA registration number, and you'll see that there's a lot of products out there that are really one product that some guy makes in a master chemical lab, and he sells them to everybody out there, and they put their own name on it, like Windex or Fantastic. But in that chain, you will find the test data on that product, even if it's just a sub-label product. So you can find out exactly what the kill claims are, including all the lab tests. If it says it kills something, somewhere on that EPA site, it's going to have the test studies from an independent third party that will show the actual test data.
Awesome. Thanks so much for that information. Another question was, what kind of penalties would an organization face if they made a false label claim?
Could you repeat that?
Yeah, so if they put something on the label that was just untrue, would they face like a fine? Would they get arrested? What kind of penalties might an organization face?
For a manufacturer to put a label claim out there? It's interesting. In years past, it was a little bit less monitored. And what I mean by that is people wouldn't put it on the label, but if you went to their website, they would plaster their website with, "Oh, we kill everything under the sun. This is the best thing ever." and they were kind of veiled from it, and the EPA didn't crack down on that. Now they're actually looking at people's websites and holding their feet to the fire. But there's been cases where people have put label claims out there and couldn't substantiate the claim, and they levied 7-8 figure fines by the EPA. They'll put people out of business without thinking twice about it because they take that stuff very seriously.
Wow, okay, that's great information to know. Thank you. And then one more question is, what are the pros and cons of a property owner providing the cleaning products rather than the cleaning company, providing their own products?
That's another good question. And I'd say with probably 95% of our accounts, our clients, we provide the chemicals, and we very closely monitor what's in the building. Even though we're a franchise company, I've got operations people that tour the buildings, not only to check the cleanliness, but also audit the closets, as it were, and what's in them. So as long as, but that other 5% or so, they're very particular what's in their building. Some want green cleaning, which is somewhat of a well, green cleaning is not a misnomer, but green disinfecting is, because green disinfecting, the kind of implication, there's no chemicals involved. So that's more of a mechanical process. But we don't have a problem with clients that want to specify the chemical, as long as we're comfortable with it. We won't work with anything that contains bleach. If the customer insists on it, we'll actually get them to sign a waiver, because bleach damages so many surfaces. And there are cases where people are like, we clean for people like United Airlines catering. Okay, they make food all day. They want to be sure that no one walks through their doors with any chemical that they didn't place in the building, for obvious reasons. So cases like that, we're more than happy to let them spec the chemical, because then the liability is on their side. But we're happy to work with anyone on the selection process, whether it's theirs to begin with, or they just want to be party to it because they've got a lot of people that are concerned about what's being sprayed in their building. So we can certainly work on the front end as a consultant to make sure that the proper chemicals are selected.
That makes sense. Thanks so much, Dan. So another question popped up. They said, how often is training provided to employees, and how often should companies, try or target to train their employees?
Well, I can speak from our side. When someone enters this business, they go through a 3-week training that covers everything, about commercial cleaning, from the safety aspects to the chemicals and everything else. And then we have ongoing seminars several times a year that just give the latest and greatest updates. And then our operations team is always in the field working with the service providers to make sure that they are compliant, for starters, and also utilizing the proper chemicals. And and most times most of our chemical conversations aren't always just about killing COVID, although that seems to be what we've just gotten. That's the world we live in right now. Mostly we're trying to achieve a better outcome. Hey, we just are trying to get a better looking, aesthetically looking building. And there's new challenges that come up every day. If any of you have in your places of business, say for instance, what's known as a LVT, or a luxury vinyl flooring, those are beautiful floors. There's no wax on them. They look like wood, they look like tile, and they're maintenance free, right? Those are hands down the most difficult surfaces that we've had to clean in the last 4 or 5 years. They're extremely hard to clean. It means different chemicals, different equipment. So the chemical discussions are usually centered around not only disinfecting, but the chemicals themselves. But it's an ongoing process, because everything evolves. The flooring types evolve, the surfaces we're cleaning evolve, and I hate to say it, but the pathogens evolve. I wish I could tell you that COVID's the last troublesome thing we're going to encounter, but there's already, as we know, variants of that. There's another Ebola concern coming out of some of the other continents that we're watching. So it's a never-ending process to be one step ahead of what's evolving, and coming, to ultimately the U.S. however it gets there.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because even COVID itself is evolving too, so there's always going to be something new
without a
on the
doubt.
horizon. Yep.
Yep.
Okay, that is all of the questions we have. But like we said earlier, if any more pop into your head later, Dan's contact information is here. So we just want to say, Dan, thank you so much for taking the time to share your expertise. We really enjoyed learning from you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for manning the slides for me. Sorry for that. Believe it or not, we got on yesterday and had a nice dry run, and then we fired up the system today, and it wasn't cooperating. So thank you for your help there, Kirsten.
Oh yeah, no problem. So thanks everyone for joining us. We hope you enjoyed learning more about the two differences between cleaning and disinfecting. Keep an eye on your email. We'll be sending out a recording of the presentation so you can refer to it later, as well as more information about our upcoming webinars in this series. So thanks everyone. Hope to see you at the next one. Have a good day.